If you were mind readers, you'd all be laughing now. Could have read my mind, it would have really been a vaudeville show for you. Because I was sitting here and I was thinking of the most tragic thing in the world that I could possibly think about. And you know what it was? It was a little chicken just before it bites its way out of the egg. I was thinking of this little chick locked up inside of the egg, a full and complete chicken. And I was trying to live its feelings, wondering a little bit, really, what it had to live for. If it looked around inside there, it was pretty dark. It might even feel a sense of hunger, and there was no food there. And above all things, there was no companionship. Here's this lone little chick locked up, tightly locked up in this egg. It had nothing to be happy about, but on the other hand, it had nothing to be unhappy about, because it didn't know what it was missing. It hadn't ever known the world. All it knew was being locked up in there and not even knowing that it was locked up inside of this eggshell. Now, as far as the chick is concerned, I could see that chick in and of itself might stay there forever, just living in that darkness, or living as long as it didn't starve. It might even find enough food in there to keep it alive. Not much more than that, keep it existing. It wouldn't really be living, it would be existing in there. And of itself, it could do nothing about it. There it is, and there it's doomed to be. But fortunately for these little chicks, there is something beyond themselves. There is something that causes that chick to peck at the shell and to keep pecking at it until it breaks a hole in it, until it sees some light. Oh, I suppose we could think of what goes on in a little chick's thought when it begins to catch that light outside and realize, there's something out there, something I haven't seen, something I haven't felt, maybe someplace I haven't been. And it keeps pecking away, Something is making it do this. We'll call it a force of nature, like the unborn child, just before it's born, that is being urged forward, out. Not of its own self. It knows nothing about an outside world. It has no desire to get out. Probably left to itself, it thinks, I'm pretty warm and comfortable here. But there is something urging. We call it a force of nature that eventually would compel that child to be born. Something would compel that chick to break that shell and come outside and find a great big world, a tremendous big yard to go looking for food, and oh, the amount of food in that yard, and all the other chicks out there to play with, and some rain. Oh, You know more than I do. I've never been on a farm, but you know what things that chick's going to find in the first 6 hours it's out of its shell. More things than a child is going to find at the foot of the Christmas tree on Christmas. And here it is now, no longer restricted, no longer bound, but with the ability to look out there and see a million things and hear things and feel things and experience things in a great big world. And what made me think of all this was the fact that going round and round inside here has been a thought that men, women, and children are prisoners of the mind. Think of the average man, woman, and child and see if they aren't locked up inside of their mind, and they know not what is going on in this world except what's going on in here, what they're thinking, their own limitations. They're living in their restricted, limited. They don't know about the free world. They don't know about the coal in the ground, the oil in the ground, the diamonds, the platinum, the gold and silver and copper, pearls in the sea. They don't know anything. All they're doing is living inside here in a shell that we call the skull. And that's where the average person is living, inside of their skull, seeing only their own thoughts, believing only their own concepts, their own limitations. It's a terrible world to live in, the world of one's mind, because that mind doesn't know anything beyond its own limitations. It knows nothing except what it's experienced or what its parents told it or its Sunday school teacher or somebody else that may have had a limited concept of the world. And so it accepts every kind of belief that's given to it. It accepts every kind of law of limitation. It finally settles down on a little plot of ground about 20 by 60 and calls it home. Lucky if they ever get one that's 100 by 100, or calls that home. They eat, they drink, they sleep, they have families, but they're on a treadmill. They're living a life of limitation, locked up in here, not knowing a thing about the great big world and the wonderful people in the world. Know nothing about the cattle on 1,000 hills, the great mountains and the great seas. And even if they see them around, they just see them as scenery. Some few are fortunate that the law, whether we want to call it nature or whether we want to call it God, something stirs inside of the mind and makes them wonder, is there something beyond this that I know? Is there something beyond this that I'm seeing with my eyes or hearing with my ears or thinking with my mind? We call it a desire to know God, or we call it a desire for truth, or a reaching out for truth. Sometimes it comes in the form of ambition. that makes a person want to break through their present circumstances and get out into a wider atmosphere of life, a broader atmosphere, something beyond their present limitations. Because remember this, there are no limitations. Just for a moment, take the blinkers off your own eyes and think of this ocean out front here, and the mountains around, and the world beyond the mountains, and the world beyond the seas. And notice, well, it might be a moonlight night. Notice the moon up there, and it's shining on the ocean. Beauty. The pictures it presents to us of a vast infinity, not only up in the sky, but all around us in the sea, or lighting up those mountains, showing us something so vast, so far beyond our immediate reach. Or looking away from the moon into the dark part of the sky, and see those millions of stars, each one a world, each one containing a story, each one containing an experience, each one telling us some kind of a story of its light, of its fire, of its being, of its reason for being right where it is, of that which caused it to be. Come down again to the daytime. Let's travel a few miles around the island and see the vastness of space, even on a small island, the cattle on 1,000 hills, trees, plants, and then begin to ask yourself why they're there, what they're doing there, what purpose do they serve. And what do you think the answer would be if you could view all of this and then say to yourself, supposing there were no men or women on earth, to what purpose would all of this be? To what purpose would it be that there is a sun, a moon, a stars, that there's cattle on 1,000 hills, that there's tremendous trees of all kinds, plants, flowers, blooms, vegetables, fruits, diamonds in the ground, pearls in the sea? To what purpose if there isn't a man, if there isn't a woman, if there isn't what we know as human life on earth, which isn't human life at all? Because once you begin to peck your way through this shell of the human mind and look outside, you'll find that all of this is there for you and me. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and Son, all that I have is thine. Everything that exists for you and for me. God has created a tremendous universe. But why? Why? Not only for birds to fly around in and fish to swim around in, but that we should travel around in and own this, enjoy this. And I don't mean own it in the sense of having title to a little piece of land, because it is only when you travel up in these modern plains, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 feet, and look down, even if you do say to yourself, I own a mile of that, you're a pretty puny individual if you think in terms of owning. But when you can look down on there and say, I'm a man, a woman, I'm a creature of God, and God made this for me, for my enjoyment. I wonder how that, how these people feel who pay $1 million or $2 million for a painting and know that we are going to have the pleasure of looking at it as much as they are for just a 10-cent admission. I think it must make them feel kind of foolish, this sense of possession. How can you possess these works of art? Nobody possesses them except those who enjoy them. Those who enjoy them have the true sense of possession. So it is with the land, and so it is with the sea. Nobody can buy an ocean, and nobody can really buy a large enough piece of land to call it so. And yet, if only we lift the restriction of this mind, come out of this ironclad skull, and instead of seeing our own limited thoughts, our own man-made limitations, mind-made limitations, come out of it and live. Not exist anymore by eating 3 meals a day or having a place to sleep or a family to be with, but come out of that mind and live, and begin to see that a universe such as we have here must have been created by nothing less than what we call God. To have created this universe takes all the wisdom of an infinite intelligence, of a divine love, a great love. But love for what? To whom? It must have been a love for us, that all of this is given to us to love, to enjoy. Or you could go back to the artworks that have come down to us for generations and generations, even as we have seen it over in Egypt and in the Holy Lands or in the Near East or the Far East. These great treasures that have come down from thousands of years, and they're here for us. The people who created them didn't own them. The proof of it is they had to give them up. And they had to give them up to all of the rest of the world who came after it. And that's why they're here. Not for us to own, to possess, but for us to own and enjoy through this knowledge that there must be a God. There is a God. There is something, a spirit that has created this great universe and then set us down in it. And here it is. You see, if we keep compressing ourselves inside of this skull, we're going to have no more vision than the chicken that's inside of that shell. That's going to be the limit of its world. And this skull is going to be the limit of our world. And the little thoughts we think, because they're the thoughts that come from just looking around the room we're in or the little town we're in. We haven't opened our mind to receive the pictures from the universal mind, to receive the awareness of the divine qualities that exist throughout this world, the divine qualities that constitute art and literature and science, the qualities that exist as the love of men and women. I don't only mean the family love, I'm talking about the love of relationships on a worldwide scale, on an impersonal and personal scale, but yet a love that is not limited to just a few people that are around us, a sharing in the love of people throughout the world. How can we be aware of the fact that there are people anywhere in the world? There's only one way. You have to peck that shell open. You have to break through the limitations of this mind that tries to tell you there are only the people around us, the territory around us, and we have to open our vision until the first thing you know, we are aware of sun, moon, and stars. We are aware of oceans and of mountains, and the first thing you know, our vision goes wider and wider and wider, and the first thing you know, like Christopher Columbus, we're looking across the sea. And the first thing you know, we're discovering there's land across the sea. We haven't seen it with our eyes. But now we've stopped this limited thinking based on only what we know, and we've opened ourselves to what God knows. The God that placed us here and that placed all of this here for us. And the first thing you know, God is beginning to tell us there is something beyond this land. There are people beyond this land. There are joys, there are glories, there are experiences beyond this. And God doesn't make us all travelers. But we've discovered that we don't have to be. Once we've opened our mind, our consciousness, to the tremendous world about us, it begins to come to us. It comes to us in books. It comes to us in visitors. It comes to us in new experiences. It comes in interior revelations. We would never have to leave our little island. And yet this whole universe could be brought right to our doorstep. And in one way or another, we can enjoy the art, the literature, the sciences, the inventions, the discoveries, and the people. Because there always are enough of those traveling and going through. And one way or another, the joy would be ours of meeting them. But only if we've broken through this, so that we're not anchored down here to this finite sense that tells us that we're restricted to the room we're in. Now, the chick in the shell, if it could consciously think, would call that its world. But then, when the chick is out and it's roaming around its barnyard, it goes a step further and thinks that's its world. Well, perhaps to the chick it is, but to us it isn't. We are never confined to time or space, because we are not locked up in this skull. We are not even locked up in this body. And this is where this something that is the force that's driving us to look out, to look up, to look around. We're not doing it of our own accord. Of our own accord, we're going to stay in our shell. But something within us is nudging us, pushing us, compelling us to look around until we do become aware of this immensity all around us, and of the beauty and the harmony and the joy, the companionship and the people, and the past and the present and the future. And if we permit it, pretty soon we will have the feeling expressed by the Greek. Man, know thyself. And the first thing you know, the chick can't do it, but we can. We can begin to think, who am I? Who am I? Why am I here on earth? Am I living at this moment, or am I only existing from one day to the other? Is my life just an existence between the home and the office, or the home and the marketplace? Is my life just an existence from one meal to the next meal, from one night's sleep to the next night's sleep? Or am I living Am I living? Am I a part of this world? Was this world meant for me? Was I born into a corner of the world, or was the whole world created and presented to me on a silver platter? Aren't the heavens mine? Isn't the earth mine? It was said to our ancient Hebrew prophet, look out. All of this land that you can see is yours. I give you land as far as your eyes can carry from a mountaintop. The higher up you go, the further you'll see. The higher you go in consciousness, the wider and broader will be your vision, and the more you'll see. And the first thing you know, you'll realize, because it'll happen, well, I'm not even here. I'm not even here in this limited piece of ground. I've broken through this limitation of the skull. I'm no longer tied up inside of a skull bone. I'm not even limited to this body. All of a sudden, I am I. I am I. Now as I look up, and I can see 10,000 miles of sky and 10,000 miles of ocean, and I can see people of all nations, people of all qualities, quantities. All of a sudden, I find that I am I. I'm out of the shell. I'm out of the skull. I'm on a mountaintop of vision, and I'm hearing it. All that you can see is yours. See, not with your eyesight. All that you can apprehend, all that you can comprehend, all that you can discern, anything that you can envision is yours. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and all that I have is thine. The whole earth, the times and the tides are thine. I and my Father are one. Why, this world was created for me. I am heir to this universe, joint heir. I don't want a title to it any more than I want a title to the $2 million paintings. It's enough if I can go in when I feel like it and look at it. My soul is filled, my eye is filled, my mind is filled. What more can I do now except to go home and in the quietness of my home relive that beautiful painting? If I just stand in front of it looking at it forever, it'll grow stale. It'll become nothing but daubs of paint. It's only as I take in the vision and turn away from it and am able to enjoy it in my artistic soul. It's mine. It's mine. More than the man who paid $2 million for it. Because he can only see its dollar value, its sense of possession. There, too, he's locked up in his pocketbook. That's a dark place, too, to be locked up in. Horrible place to be, locked up in a pocketbook. Thinking that we are confined to a pocketbook. Even a big one. It's a terrible place to be. But the freedom, when this that is within us forces us to go higher and higher and higher in vision, getting more and more out of the skull, more and more realizing the true nature of my identity. Why, I am I. I am the offspring of God. I am heir of God, joint heir. There are no limitations to my inheritance, no limitations to my vision, no limitations to what I own. The whole earth is mine, the sun and the moon and the stars. How much more could I own them if I had legal title to them? I'd still have to leave them where they are for everybody else to enjoy who hasn't legal title to them. This that pushes the chick out of the shell, this that's pushing us out of the shell, out of this limited skull, forcing us to push those skull bones away so that we can be free and be the I that I am. And then look around and realize that wherever I look, I'm meeting my brothers and my sisters. Wherever I look, I'm seeing my mother and my father. Wherever I look, I'm seeing my children. Everywhere. Everywhere. And the vision through which I see is the vision that's given back to me. And even the birds and the dogs and the cats come running up to show that they recognize the fact that they have been seen by their brother. And they see their brother then, and know as they are known. You see, we aren't limited to the 20th century. There too, being locked up in those skull bones makes us believe that our lives are being lived in the 20th century. Oh, that's a small part of our lives. Our lives really encompass all of the past and the present and all of the future that we can climb high enough to vision. If only we climb high enough in our spiritual vision, we can know this whole world for generations to come. It's all here to be seen. It's all here to be experienced. There's nothing new going to be created tomorrow. Not a thing. All that was is now. All that ever will be is now. But you have to get up on the mountaintop of vision to behold it. And the mountaintop of vision is when you have broken through all limitations and can say, I am I. Not I am me. Not I am John, Mary, Joel. I am I, the Son of God, heir of God, joined heir to all the heavenly riches. And then when we walk out on the street, by the sea, in the mountains, flying through the air, there's a whole lot different feeling. There's no sense of personal possession. There's just the sense of the enjoyment of all there is, because it's free. It's free. From the very beginning of my work, a man dedicated a poem to me, and he called it, "The Greatest Things in Life Are Free." And the reason was that he was a very prosperous man, a very successful businessman. And, well, he had no time. That was his whole trouble. He just had no time. Morning, noon, and night, and all night, he had to work at his possessions. And as he studied with me, and I would say to him, let's take this weekend off. I can't do that. I can't do that. Can't do that. No, I have to take care of my business. I have, oh, well, now, come on. Let's have a few hours. No, I just have appointments. And well, now what are we going to do with all this money? After all, at the rate you're going, you'll probably drop dead before you get a vacation to spend it on. And so it was that out of the Spirit it came, let's look around here. and see if we can't find some things to enjoy that don't cost any money. Let's go over to Central Park. Just stand around those lakes and watch the kids with their little boats, so forth and so on. And the first thing you know, we were in Central Park, and on another time we were on a roof garden. Another time we went to a musical concert. And the first thing you know, he began to say, you know, really the great things in life are free. Yes, if you can free yourself. There is where we lose out. The world is free, but we aren't free. And so he wrote this poem, which later became a song. The greatest things in life are free. But they aren't really. They aren't really. The things in life never had a price tag on them. Nothing in this life ever had a price tag. We placed the price tag on them. We placed the price tag on them. It's because we aren't free that we bind everything into a price tag. The moment we realize that space doesn't cost money, we'd really find we could afford to take an airplane trip or a steamship trip. It's while we have a price tag on it and say so many miles cost so many dollars that we have just put time and space in a price bracket. And we've done it with everything else. We've done it with holidays. We've done it with Saturdays and with Sundays. We've counted the cost. We've put a label on them, then said, I can't have it. But you see, God never put a price on time or space or place. God never put a price on parks, on green, on mountains, on lakes, on oceans. And it is only that when we're locked up in this skull that we can see the limitations that the human mind has placed on things. Come out. Break through the limitations of the mind. And don't believe these signs that you see. And work more with yourself. Realize who you are. Realize, first of all, there's no greater experience in the world than taking a day off for walking where you can see mountains and sea and sun and moon and stars, and then realizing, why are they here? Why did God create them? And what good would they be if man wasn't here, if I weren't here? What good would they be? What purpose? How could they glorify God? Well, you see, it is like our beautiful flowers that have no color whatsoever and no beauty. There's no color in those flowers and there's no beauty in them. You'd be surprised what they are when there's nobody in the room. They're nothing. They don't glorify anything. They don't show forth any color. They don't show forth any shape. They have to hit our eyes before there is color, form, beauty. Why? Because everything is translated by our inner awareness. Of itself, nothing is beautiful. Not even the sun, moon, and stars. Even the ocean wouldn't have a sound if we weren't standing there to hear those waves. Not a sound would come out of the ocean's roar. Not a sound. Not a bit of color would come out of the most beautiful garden if there weren't eyes to translate those light waves into color and form. And so you see that all of this was made for us. All of this was made for the edification of our soul, of our life, of our being. It was given to us so that we might have beauty in our lives. Not the kind of beauty you go out and pay for. The beauty that grows. The beauty that's already there by virtue of the fact that God made it before He made man, and then He made man to enjoy it. Whatever God is, whatever concept of God you entertain is of no importance, as long as you realize that there is a God that placed the food in the ground, and the trees in the earth, and formed the mountains and the lakes and the seas and the rivers and the streams, and He did it for us, because without us the earth would be formless and void. It is we who put the beauty, we who put the value, we who give the grace to everything that is, and it's all here for us. Do you see, then, that when I say that man is a prisoner of the mind, men and women are prisoners of their mind, and they see only the limitations of their own thinking until they begin to break through and look out at this world. And then in seeing this and in noting the grandeur of this universe and realizing, just think, it's here for me. In creating me to enjoy this, God was doing a tremendous thing, not for God, but for me. Look what God has done for me to give me this universe to live in, this beauty to enjoy, this music, this melody, these forms of art, literature, science. Sometimes I think, as I go back to those days in my reading, I think of what it must have meant to the men in the schools of wisdom when they began to discern the secrets of mathematics. Before them, little mathematics was known, and all of a sudden these men began to learn the nature of mathematics, the use of mathematics. And just think, with the discovery of geometry way back centuries BC in Egypt, with the discovery of geometry alone, all of this world could be built. Its roads, its buildings, everything can be done with geometry. Where does it come from? God has given it. But before we discovered it, of what use was geometry? How great must we be then that geometry, mathematics of all kind, was created for us? The secrets of chemistry that are now being unlocked to the world, secrets of science that are being unlocked, think that they served no purpose until man came along to fathom them out and to use them. Then they must have been created for our purpose. How great are we that God in His infinite wisdom has given these great secrets for man, for us to enjoy, to use, to utilize, to put into existence. Then what must we be? Well, just think of a parent that works a lifetime so that they might have 10,000, 20, 50, 100,000, 500,000 to leave to their children. Think of the feeling as they are accumulating an estate for the joy of handing it over to their children. If the children had really vision enough to think, they must say, oh, what love my parents must have had for me, that they devoted a lifetime to accumulating this home or this estate or this For me. Think how they must have thought of me. Well, think how much greater God must be thinking of us, that He has stored up the secrets of mathematics, science, art, literature, music, all of the great wisdoms of the world for us, His sons and daughters. And we go around bemoaning our fate, fearing some tiny little event or other, even fearing death, as if death could make any difference to our relationship with God. Neither life nor death could separate me from the love of God. Neither life nor death could take from me that which God has stored up for me. And God has stored up this whole universe. Now, wouldn't it be sinful to believe for a moment that God stored it up for this individual or that one, or this race or that one, or this family or that one? Oh no, again, we would have to be locked up in the confines of a skull to believe that that which God has done is for somebody. It isn't for somebody, it's for everybody. Everybody capable of accepting. If so be the Spirit of God dwells in you, then are you the Son of God. Only when you can break through this limitation and realize, I am I. I am the offspring of God. I call no man on earth my father. There is but one that created me, and He created me in His own image and likeness, and made me heir to His whole creation. He made this whole creation for me. And that me is you and me. Do you not see that if you're going to keep living in here, you're only imitating the chicken in the shell, and never going to know the wide expanse that Moses was given from the mountaintop? Look out. As far as your eyes can see, I'm giving to you. This is your land. As far as your eye can see. How far can your eye see? Because it isn't a physical eye, and it isn't a physical mountain. It isn't a mountain 4,000 feet high or 10. It's a mountaintop of vision, of spiritual vision. How high can you rise in consciousness to realize you have no right to be a chick in a shell, and you have no right to be a man locked up in a skull? You have a right to break through and say, thank God, I am I know me now. I know thee who thou art, the Holy One of Israel. I know thee who thou art, the Holy One of Israel, the Son of God, the child of God, the offspring, the heir of God. Only break open that shell. Stop thinking in terms of finite personalities and come out and realize, I am I. When you're up on this vision, you look down and you can see into the mind, and you see the nasty little scrawly things that make people do the things they do. The limiting things, the evil things, the selfish things, the jealous things. You look down and you see it and you say, oh, if you could only break open that shell. Break open that shell and come out and realize that I am I, and there's no reason then to be this way. No reason to do this, because I'm heir of God. Then I can look out, not be jealous of others' success, but rejoice that they have opened themselves to the vision of their true identity and come into their heritage. You can only see this from a spiritual height, that the earth isn't matter and that it can't be divided up into building lots. The earth isn't matter any more than art is matter. You see, art can't be confined to space, because these paintings that sold for $2 million aren't bigger than this. So it isn't what's on that 2 feet of space that cost $2 million. It's that which came out of consciousness, and yet it only takes up 2 feet of space. No, it makes a difference whether we are on a small island or a great big continent. We have just as much limitation, just as much, if we're living in that skull bone and calling ourselves me. And on the other hand, there are people who are gloriously free that never have seen the outside of a small community. But they have brought the wealth of the world to them. They've brought the vision of the world, the people of the world, art, literature, science, and so forth. Because we do not live in time or space, we live in consciousness. And we live as big as our consciousness can be. We live as big as our consciousness can be. We live as small as we can press ourselves or compress ourselves between the bones of the skull. We live inside here as if all that is taking place in here is the world. It isn't. The less time we spend in here, the better off we'll be. The more time we can spend looking out. Then when we go into meditation, we aren't living in here with our thoughts, we're living in here in a receptivity of infinity. That's why we don't think our own thoughts in meditation. That's why we don't restrict ourselves to what we know. We don't just declare what we think or believe or our concepts, but when we turn in meditation, it is as much as to say, the kingdom of God is within me. The kingdom of this whole universe is within me, and so my chest expands to include the whole of God's universe, and now I can look down in there and have His whole wisdom come to me. Have His whole love, His whole life, His whole companionship flow forth, because now this chest is as big as the universe. It's holding the whole universe inside of it. There is a spirit in us that causes us to be here, seeking communion with each other, but yet not with each other. Only because we recognize that we can commune with God in each other and through each other, and therefore have access to infinity. Now, if you start to think in terms of your education or lack of it, or even boast about a lot of it, you're going to be bound up in finiteness, because the most educated person in the world hasn't a grain of wisdom. No one person could store up enough knowledge out of books to be equal to 1 grain of God's wisdom. Therefore, you have to go beyond all that you know or think you know, all that you've learned or think you've learned. You have to go beyond that to the unknown, the infinite unknown. And until you reach into the infinite unknown, you do not have the limitlessness of God's kingdom. Because the wisdom of God can reveal itself to any individual in the world, as it did to our ancients, to whom the laws of mathematics were first revealed. The laws that made possible pyramids, the great temples, Caesar's roads that are still being driven over in Italy and in England. Roads that have stood for 2,000 years because they were built with a knowledge that we don't have today, because we're limiting our knowledge to what somebody thinks they know in college. We have witnessed the great stones of Stonehenge and witnessed these stones of thousands of tons that have come 150 miles across water and across land in the days when there was no machinery to move them, when there were no boats capable of carrying such cargoes. And yet they knew how to float them on water and get them across land. Why? Because they were unlimited. They had behind them the mathematics of God, not just the little arithmetic of man, but the mathematics of God. And so it has been architectural wonders of the world that today still are marvels and are unequaled. Why? Because men had access to the wisdom behind the wisdom of men. And the only way they could do it was to go back in consciousness into the infinite unknown and let it declare itself. And then comes through the music and the art and the literature and the sciences, the secrets that even this day are being unlocked to us. But always ask yourself, why? Why are these great things being revealed to us today? Why? And then you'll know they're being revealed for man. For man, because he's an heir of God and entitled to all that the Father hath, all of the joy, all of the abundance, all of the infinity, all of the life, all of the love, all of the wisdom. He's entitled to every bit of it, and it's being revealed unto man for his use, his joy, his beauty, that his life may be one of grace and peace. When you realize that, take the next step and realize, I am that man, I am that woman, I am that being for whom all of this is created. And then to me will come that which fulfills my nature. Certainly to me as a person, none of the secrets of mathematics or science come, because that would not fulfill my particular nature. To me comes the secrets of the spiritual universe and the secrets of the soul of men. The souls of men who have lived throughout all of the ages are revealed to me, because that fulfills me. In that I find my joy. In that I find my companionship. In that I can tabernacle. But then there are others to whom would come the mathematics and the chemistry and the arts and sciences and music, because that would fulfill their nature. God is infinite and we are infinite in being. There must be an infinity of nature on earth, and so each one of us has some part of that nature in which we are to be fulfilled. But it's all here. And how wonderful to know that it's here for me and for you and for us, for mankind, that we are that great in the image and likeness of God. We are that great in God's eyes that He has stored this up for us, that we may know infinite good, boundless good. That's why, to me, the greatest thing on earth is men and women. That's the greatest thing on earth to me, because in them I find fulfillment. In them I find God's soul, full of life, full of love, full of joy, full of peace. And so it is that I can enjoy the scenery as I pass it, whether it's mountains, lakes, or oceans, stars, sun, moon. I can enjoy food, I can enjoy the theater, but none of it is my real joy. I only know my real joy in men and women, because in them I find the whole of God revealed. The whole of God is stored up in man, and all of this world is really only an instrument, a tool for us, a garden for us to play in. And not with just toy dolls or toy engines or toy airplanes, but the whole world is a garden, a playground, a place of joy, a place of inspiration. Well, that about tells it. Thank you.